Hey everybody, this is Debbie. You are watching Around the World Learning, and today we're going to talk about Martin Luther King Day. As many of you know, Martin Luther King was a black activist in the 1960s, and on Monday we celebrate him in what he did for the people in America. So I have so many notes today that I'm going to be reading from my notes, but I'm going to still be animated and fun like usual. So the first word we're going to talk about is speeches. So when people stand in front of a group and give a talk trying to convince people about something, they are giving a speech. The next word is civil rights movement. That was a time, as I said, in the 1960s when people fought for black rights. Before that, blacks had been treated very poorly. They couldn't go drink from the same fountains. They couldn't use sometimes the same bathrooms, especially in the South. Protests were times when, or when people yell and hold signs, and they're like, "Make love, not war. Make love, not war." Things like that. Non-violent. Whenever you see the words non, that's going to be not. So non-violent, as you can guess, is not violent. And it's more peaceful, holding protests and not shooting people or hitting people or fighting. That's non-violent. Martin Luther King used to be attacked in places, or his people that followed him would be attacked, and they would not fight back because they were using non-violent methods. Another person who used those type of methods was Gandhi. So, integration is when blacks and whites were allowed to go to the same place. One of the big things in the 1960s was getting blacks and whites to be allowed to go to the same schools. Or also being able to sit in the same places at restaurants or ride in the same spots on the buses. Blacks used to have to go in the back of the bus. And that was not very nice because they'd have to walk further. Equal rights means that everyone is treated the same, that everyone is treated fairly. Segregation was the opposite of integration. As I said, integration was coming together. Segregation was pulling apart. Celebrate. Some people think celebrate is like party, like, yeah, oh yeah, party time, excellent. But it's not. It means not always. Sometimes it does. But it also means to honor. So if we celebrate Martin Luther King Day, means we honor him on that day. Assassinated is means to kill a leader. So for example, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. As was Martin Luther King. Some people don't realize Martin Luther King was killed, but he actually was shot when he was at a hotel in 1968. So for the next segment, we are going to be talking about Martin Luther King's life more. If you have the worksheets, follow along and fill in the blanks. If you don't, just listen to, about Martin Luther King. So every January, we celebrate the life of Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King was the most important activist of the civil rights movement. Martin Luther believed in equal rights for everyone. He thought all people should be treated fairly. Martin Luther King was born in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. At that time, there was segregation. Black people and white people had to use different bathrooms, drinking fountains, and sometimes different restaurants. Martin knew early in his life that he wanted to fight for civil rights and integration. He wanted blacks and whites to be able to go to the same schools and many other places together. Martin fought hard, but he used non-violent ways to fight. He gave speeches, he protested, and he led boycotts. Boycotts are when you refuse to use a product or service because you don't agree with the company's policies. Martin got arrested many times while fighting for equal rights. Martin was also attacked. People also threatened him. He kept fighting for equal rights. His most famous speech took place at an event called the March on Washington. He led a march in Washington, D.C. with 250,000 people. During the march, he gave his famous speech called I Have a Dream. His I Have a Dream speech talked about how he wanted equal rights for his children and all people. Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. He was shot while he was at his hotel. So feel free to fill in the blanks if you have the worksheet. If you don't have the worksheet and you wonder where to get the worksheet, there's a link below. Ding, ding, ding. So, also, now we're going to talk about the questions to consider when talking about Martin Luther King. So, get into groups or talk to a partner. Who is someone you look up to? Why do you look up to them? What are some good qualities in a leader? What is a cause that is important to you? Do you think peaceful protests are effective? Why or why not? Have there been fights for equal rights in your country? Who were the rights for? So those are the questions that go with this. And I hope you enjoyed learning more about Martin Luther King. In the comments below, feel free to tell me about who some of the leaders for equal rights were in your country. And until next time, I'm Debbie. Bye.